into the work that you're doing, advising undergraduate students or different sections of the research project that you're in charge of. That way, when you're applying for jobs, you'll have concrete examples of project management that you have done and can speak authoritatively on that topic. And that linear work experience is going to be really critical to career success outside of academia.
Great. So let me now go back to my slides and say that this message, I would wager, is not typical, something I never heard it when I was in graduate school at all. And it is kind of a real difference from one of the kind of discourse that goes on in our graduate schools. Here's another one that our PhD students probably don't get exposed to. And I ask the question again, are PhD students at your universities typically exposed to messages like this? Here's one from a career coach called Elena Hoffer. And she has this LinkedIn post, and here's the post. She has a wonderful graphic here. And she says, as you can see on the right, the value of a PhD, what we think the value of a PhD is, and it's all publications. And then she says what the actual value is and lists a whole bunch of skills. And so I think there's a danger that we reduce the PhD to publications only, and that our PhD students think they can only do one thing, which is to publish papers, and that's all. So, the fact that we don't hear these messages enough means that we continue kind of fixating on the horizon of graduation, right? That we think often PhD students don't think beyond graduation. I understood it well when I was trying to finish, or in the years leading up to it. I was only thinking about finishing my very daunting PhD dissertation. My supervisor wasn't really talking about other things. So we get this tunnel vision. We get this tunnel vision. And as I said, PhD researchers and supervisors often don't think beyond the degree. They often don't think beyond academia either. But there's a problem because most PhDs don't end up in full-time permanent academic positions. For instance, Leonard Kasuda and Robert Weisbuck in their book from just a few years ago, The New PhD, explained that in the case of American PhD students, only 1 out of 4 will end up obtaining an academic position, which includes non-tenure track positions after graduation. There's a lot of reports now coming on the career paths of scientists, scientific reports from 2023, and then a new study that just came out, which is discussed in Nature. And these studies, basically, their conclusion is that in the sciences, the academic career path is the exception. Most people do not end up in academic positions, but there's certain forces that kind of keep us fixated on that horizon of graduation and don't look beyond that wall, right? Or we create a wall for ourselves, as that image shows. Many of our PhDs don't have a clear idea of what they could do beyond academia. Many supervisors don't either have a clear idea of what their PhD students can do beyond academia. And this is understandable because we are not experts in alternative career exploration or in labor market trends. So I think a lot of people are reticent to talk about it. And so as I said, we have a hard time even discussing alternate careers, and there's all kinds of dynamics too, that there's this on our half, those of us who have supervised PhD students, we have this kind of fear of a lack of expertise, and PhD students might have this fear of seeming to betray their PhD supervisors. So those are some of the forces that keep us fixated on the horizon itself and not beyond. What happens beyond the horizon? What helps us prepare for work and life after graduation? So let me then just lay out quickly, 3 methods I've thought of for actually helping a PhD students do so. One is to really articulate unspoken expectations about geographic and intersectoral mobility. Let me tell you what I mean. So first here, this is based on a lot of work on what's called the hidden curriculum. Here, this is not the first person to use it, but a certain Jessica McCrory Clarko wrote this book, A Field Guide to Graduate School, uncovering the hidden curriculum. And there she sort of defines this as the hidden curriculum, the things you're expected to know or do but won't be explicitly taught in graduate school. And so I think we need to examine ourselves. What are our unspoken expectations for our PhD students? And what questions should we be asking our PhD students to prepare for life and work after graduation? Let me give you a list now, which I hope will be slightly provocative. And these have to really, because we're talking about life and work, we have to really talk about mobility. We have to talk about geographic mobility. Where do our PhD graduates end up? And intersectoral, what do they do? And often these are questions that are fundamental, but we don't broach them, right? We don't discuss them. Let's start with geographic. Okay, so two big questions in anyone's life. Where will the PhD student live after graduation? And where also are they expected to live? Where does the institution expect them to live? This is a major question for anyone who's doing a PhD in maybe a major metropolitan area with a diversified job market. Here's a picture of Vienna, since Julia's university is in Austria. And this also is a question for any PhD students who might have a partner with their own career. They might need to live in a city that has a broad and diversified enough labor market to support two kind of careers, especially in the knowledge economy. So some questions here that we need to consider and ask ourselves and ask our PhD students or talk to them about. I mean, do our universities engage in internal hiring? Do our universities have any unspoken expectations about where their PhD should live after graduation? Um, do PhD graduates stay at their university or go elsewhere for academic positions? Are they expected to stay or to try to stay? Or are they expected to go elsewhere, anywhere, for a postdoc and then maybe come back? Um, and if they're expected to stick around, how long should they do so? How long should they wait for a position? How long are they supposed to wait? Right? So let me just give you an example of how this came up in my university, and this is perhaps something that you can might ring a few bells for you. So each February, I organize some events for PhD students as part of the University of Iceland Career Days, and last year I'll do it again now in February. I had an event called PhDs at Work: the keys to an academic career. And here I had three panelists, and the one in the red box, that's the one I'll be focusing on. Her name is Aðalheiður Guðmundsdóttir. She's a professor of medieval Icelandic literature. And she got her PhD at the University of Iceland and has been there since the year 2000. And so I asked her and the other panelists also the following question. What do you think was the key factor in your hiring? What did you do from the end of your PhD studies until your hire that improved your chances of getting an academic job? So she says this kind of a screenshot from the presentation. I was actually an adjunct for 6 years before I was hired as a lecturer, which means assistant professor. But if you actually look at her CV, as she lists helpfully here, she finished her PhD in 2002, and it wasn't, then she was a part-time teacher. She was an adjunct starting in 2006. Then she got a postdoc in 2008. And then it wasn't until the year 2012, 10 years after her PhD, that she obtained a tenure track position, right? So, one reaction to this would be, well, this is a fantastic case of resilience. Our PhD students need to learn resilience, stick to their guns, just grind it out. If it's your passion, do whatever you need to, even if it means, having a adjunct salary for 10 years. Another way of looking at this would be that this is a very toxic work culture. And so the jury is out on this. You'll have to decide. The PhD students have to decide. But this is the kind of thing that's not discussed, right? And so there's certain assumptions or expectations about career outcomes that we can discern here. One is that, the expectation is wait around till someone retires or till something opens up. Just wait, even if you have to wait 10 years, right? And so and another assumption is that yes, you can be hired by your own department. So this brings up a slew of questions. Do departments view it as desirable to hire their own PhDs for academic positions? how does being a graduate from a department and a known factor, in terms of internal teaching experience, social contacts, knowing people in the hallway, right? How does that compare to other factors like external experience? What if you did your PhD elsewhere? Um, Perhaps having a research field that fills a gap in the department's field expertise, the number of publications, the quality of publications, grants awarded, teaching experience. So all these questions need to be discussed, and we need to tell our PhD students, I mean, do we have any in our department and university culture, do we have any general guidelines about this? So is it good for you when you graduate to go away, or should you stick around, and for how long, right? And this brings up the question about academic hiring cultures. If we zoom out from my university to think about how things work in our national context, do we have conversations with our PhD students and supervisors about how academic hiring works in our different national contexts? Let me give you one example of that I know well. Of stratification of faculty hiring from the U.S. humanities, and the question is whether this applies to your kind of local ecosystem. So here, basically, this article from 2021 lays out four tiers, right? We have this kind of tier one of elite institutions, for instance, the Ivy League. Tier two is our major research universities, like say, state schools like the University of Wisconsin or Illinois. Tier three would be regional research universities, and tier four would be, the least prestigious, which would be kind of regional undergraduate institutions. And it just so happens that this study shows that elite institutions hire from each other. In the US, I have this rule that you can't hire your own graduates, but the Ivies, for instance, hire from other Ivies. The tier two institutions, well, they're content to hire from within their own ranks, or better yet, they'll try to poach from the tier above. Same principle for tier three. Okay, they might hire from their own tier, but they'd rather go up, poach someone from above, or especially from tier one. Then same principle goes on tier four. Okay, they can take from their own tier, but they'd rather also poach from above, from the above layers, the layers above, right? So that's how it works there. And this is the kind of thing that really if it works like this in Lithuania, in Greece, in Austria, these are questions that I think we really need to make PhD students aware of, so they know how mobile they might be and what chances they might have. Right. Also, it turns out that there's an incredible monopolization of academic jobs in the United States. Article in Nature from 2022 made a lot of waves talking about narrow hiring practices at U.S. universities, and it turns out that 80% of U.S. educated faculty members receive their doctoral degrees from just 20% of universities. So this is something our PhD students should know about. Are they at one of those universities that kind of place students elsewhere or not? Question about postdoctoral grants, to continue my litany of questions. Are they expected to do postdocs after graduation? Are they expected to be international or stay at home? How competitive are postdoc grants at your universities or elsewhere? How many postdoc fellowships are enough or too much? In your country, in your local environment, is there a postdoc trap of engaging, doing too many postdocs, or should PhD students engage in academic or non-academic job searches as soon as they start their postdoc? And do you believe that there's a crossroads that's reached at the end of the first postdoc, or should they continue and accumulate them, or is that the postdoc trap? And so that's now I've been talking about geographic mobility. Let me now talk about intersectoral mobility. So, what will our PhD students do wherever they end up living? And do our universities have any spoken or unspoken expectations about what PhD should be doing in whatever location they end up in? This is the intersectoral mobility, which again is this kind of second fundamental question that's not broached, and which preparing our PhD students from work and life after graduation is really necessary to handle, to broach. Intersectoral mobility. So, do supervisors, departments, universities assume that there's only one legitimate career path after PhD academia? Do they openly acknowledge that many, if not most, most PhDs will not end up in these tenure track academic positions, as I said at the beginning. Mm. Is the possibility of careers outside, university academic departments ever mentioned by these groups, by our local ecosystems? Or is there kind of a silence about it? Is there an assumed feeling that leaving academia is tantamount to betrayal? So we need to discuss these questions, examine ourselves, and start asking our PhD students some of these questions. And as I've been saying now, we must discuss geographic and intersectoral mobility openly with our PhD students and also with the PhD supervisors we work with, because they are the enabler or the roadblock, right? If we don't get them on board, then we will not be able to get PhD students on board. So now, let me move quickly on to my second method for helping our PhD students prepare for the future, which is creating a PhD alumni database. Let me give you a quick, this is recommendation based on our own experience. So here we have this University of Iceland PhD alumni database. At the bottom here, you can see the address. So I urge you to go explore it and look around. And perhaps some of you who like to multitask can do it as I speak. This is what the English, what it looks like in English. And it's almost all PhDs from 2010 to 2024, so almost the past 15 years. Um, and I'd just like to give credit to my coworker here. So the following slides are drawn in a modified way from two different presentations that I did with Eirun Lóa Eiríksdóttir, who is a PhD student in Comp Lit and a project manager in University Administration here, and she did the data collection and all the web design for this website. So I conceptualized it, but she did, and is doing all the heavy work here. So she's not with us, but I'd just like to send out a word of thanks to Eirun Lóa for everything she's done and continues to do. The website then, yes, kind of specifies our two roles here, and then so it was launched in January of 2023. So it's been it's been active for the past 2 years. And let me start by explaining why we even created one before I give you a short tour, because we saw that there was this kind of terminal institutional view, this tunnel vision, and this fixation on the horizon of graduation that our university was not thinking about what happened beyond graduation. The only thing that mattered was graduation. There was an indifference to what PhD students did after that, kind of like fire and forget, graduate and forget. But we wanted to kind of cultivate more of a student-centered continuum, right, where we think beyond graduation, beyond the horizon, as I'm trying to advocate for here. So we want to, again, emphasize continuity. The problem is that we didn't have an overarching view of all of our PhD graduates, even as they were increasing dramatically. There's an issue of like a lack of institutional memory, that we were losing track of them. We didn't know what they were doing. And we also, besides kind of creating more of an institutional memory, we want to inspire our PhD students in the midst of the daily grind to think about the future, to see that there would be a light at the end of the tunnel. There are networking opportunities, and also give them a better idea of actual job possibilities of their peers, graduates from their own programs after graduation. We also want to give supervisors a better idea of what skills PhD students would need during their studies, so they could hopefully build them in retrospectively into the studies of the current cohorts in their programs by looking at what graduates ended up doing. And also we want to open the eyes of employers and the Icelandic society to the diversity and value of PhD careers, right? So these are the reasons. And then, so we have these features here that basically, yeah, I was talking about the main purpose already. So we just use all publicly available information, and we met all requirements for data privacy. It's available in English and Icelandic. It's also scalable for smart gadgets, which is half our traffic. And I've gone over the other points, so I'll just advance to the next slide here. And of course, I'll ask Julia or Kostas to send out a PDF of these slides, so you definitely get them. So here we have, just to give you a quick tour, I'm just doing it via screenshots to save time. We have some support material, and then we have all the doctoral graduation brochures, which are a wonderful showcase for PhDs. But more importantly, we have portals into each of our six schools: social sciences, health sciences, humanities, education, engineering, natural sciences, and also interdisciplinary studies. And there you can look up almost all graduates who agreed to take part. This is just a screenshot from the School of Social Sciences, and there you have just the first. They're listed in alphabetical order, so you just see the first three who appear, but there's a long list, right? Here's one from School of Engineering and Natural Sciences, and as you can see here, I just entered the year 2022 in one of the search fields, and you can search by department, and these are some of the people who came up who graduated from the school in that year, and as you can see, some of them, quite a few of them, have LinkedIn profiles, and that's the real gold here, that the LinkedIn profiles. And here you have just some representation of PhD students from the humanities. And also we have this countries of residence. It shows you where the countries in which PhD graduates live today. And as you can see, they are on almost all continents, besides Antarctica, of course, and South America. So we have graduates in all continents. And that really opens up the mind of our PhDs about their geographic mobility, right? Um, and yes, I've already been over this. Um, Yes, and so then the question is how this database helps our PhD students explore post-graduation career options. It does so by giving them kind of a lead into LinkedIn, right? So here we have one case of a certain Sigríður Baldursdóttir, who's a PhD in anthropology from 2018. Turns out now that you can see her kind of career development here on LinkedIn. She started after graduation as integration and segregation coordinator and project manager in Järfälla, in a suburb of Stockholm, and is now an analyst for the Public Health Agency of Sweden. And, a few people here in Iceland remember her, but most current, many members of her department wouldn't know about her. And, the question, I think, the reaction people get from seeing this is like, who knew? Right. Well, thanks to this PhD database, they know, and you can see all the kind of career possibilities that PhDs in anthropology have. Here we have Alberto Villa, who's a PhD in electrical and computer engineering, who's now he appears to have a Spanish name, but now he works in Milan as an engineer, a lead data and AI engineer. And you can see the script is small here, but you can see his whole career development just open for you to look at. Edda Siv Pind Aradottir, who's a PhD in chemistry, who's now a CEO of a carbon capture company here in Iceland. So these are just, and there's tons of possibilities, right? So this is a way in which looking at concrete career possibilities, career outcomes can help our PhDs, as I say in my title, plan for life and work after graduation. Finally, very quickly, I advocate that we point our PhD students and supervisors to existing career tools. And this is again because they aren't experts, the PhD supervisors aren't expert in we aren't experts in the labor market, in the knowledge economy and the labor market around it, but there's resources that we can point our PhD supervisors to, who can then point our PhD students to, right? Here's one, it's called My IDP, which is a wonderful one. This is for science careers, and here it has a lot of exercises to help you examine your skills, careers, interests, and values. We're running out of time, so I'm mindful of our 1 p.m. stop or 2 p.m. Central European time stopping time. So I was going to explore this with you, but you can just do it yourself. And as you can see here, that you start with a self-assessment, do some career exploration, set goals, and implement your plan. And there's just it's a great database. And I should say that there's some really, this is not a joke. I mean, these are some heavy hitters who have contributed. Four authors who are very reputable from very reputable um, institutions, as you can see here on the right. And then we have here another one called Imagine PhD, which I'm a great fan of as a humanist. So this is a career exploration and planning tool for the humanities and social sciences. And I encourage you, whether you're a scientist or humanities, social science person, to just create a profile and play around with these, and then you'll just be, able to make a good recommendation to PhD supervisors and students about ways to get educated. And again, here you have creators, 56 people from 56 academic institutions with a whole expert body here. I just want to show you very quickly. I can show you this here. I just want to make sure I'm on. Yes, indeed. So this is basically, let me show you quickly what this looks like. So what I did in Imagine PhD is that here you take three different assessments on your interests, your skills and values assessments. Then it brings up, I did this a while ago, I should do it again actually. It brings up your top 5 interests, your top 5 skills, and your key work values. And then it'll give you certain job families. And one of them, which I think is interesting, many of mine were academic, but one, for instance, that came up for me was consulting. Okay, so here then so then I click on consulting, and this will bring me up sort of PhDs with jobs in this family have these different titles, and then allow you to explore get information on a lot of jobs and information about jobs in the sector, even, job postings. You can see what these jobs actually ask for. And this is just a wonderful database maintained, led by the University of Texas, Austin. So again, a lot of heavy hitters are here. Caveat, of course, though, is that, my IDP and Imagine PhD are American sites which, propose very large, very well, highly diversified economies, and they might not work equally well in all contexts, maybe in smaller national contexts, but again, they can point your PhDs to job possibilities and suggest possibilities for them, and ways of perhaps being entrepreneurial in their own countries or elsewhere, and creating companies that do the things that some of these PhDs and these tools do as well. So I just want to then end by asking what your thoughts are. I went very rapidly over this, but I hope I know we have 15 minutes left, and I hope that will give us the time for some good Q&A. So thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Toby, for this very informative and very nice presentation. I have to say I have a lot of questions, but I will provide first the floor to the audience, to make their own statements and their own questions if this is the case. I will wait until 3, and then I will start with my questions.
Don't be shy, everyone.
So let me start, and then the further discussion will initiate. I will start to highlight, first of all, the importance of the alumni for the universities. It's not only that they can provide, very useful information on how the market works and how, probably, the whole programs can change, in a university, but also in some cases, especially in the US, they work also as the biggest funders, of the university. So it's attraction of funding as well, in the US. And, as we can see in Europe, the things are moving towards this direction, in order the university to be competitive. I would like to ask you first, my first question is like your opinion about the establishment of career coaches within the universities, within the doctoral schools. Do you have career coaches in the University of Iceland? What do you believe about them? Because the main aim and the main objective of this kind of position is like to prepare our students, our PhD students, on how to adapt in the market world in order to be more employable beyond the university. It's very correct. You mentioned only 30% of the PhD students, they work in a university waiting 5, 10, or 20 years. So Toby, what is your opinion about the career coaches? This is my first question.
Yes, it's a great one. Of course, I mentioned a few at the beginning, Maren Wood and Elena Hoffer, and I see Elena Hoffer is actually here. Well, thank you for joining us, Elena. Um, and maybe you as a career coach can say something in a moment, but thank you for joining us. But I would say that for me, the difference is not if they work in or out of the university. For me, the fundamental difference is if I feel that if they have a PhD or not. I think it's not in all cases is necessary, but I think that PhD students, and again, we're talking about stuff that's a bit unpleasant because it goes into those ideas maybe of sort of hierarchy and maybe people being a bit closed-minded and snobbish, but still, PhDs know the experience of current PhD students and they will listen to their peers, right? They will automatically, someone I think with a PhD who's a career coach has a lot more credibility. Maybe that's harsh and here, but it's really true. And I think also that we need to get PhD supervisors on board, and the people who are really ideally placed to work with our PhD students are people who understand research, who have done research, who can talk the language, not of HR, but of PhD, the university world. And maybe people who are on between two worlds, who know HR, who know the job market, but themselves have done a PhD. So I think that that's the key thing. Elena, as a real career coach, do you have anything to add?
Uh, Sorry, I just need to repeat the question. Hi, everyone. I just crashed the session to listen to Toby, actually. So the question was of whether universities should collaborate with career coaches in order to guide their PhD students.
Correct.
Yeah. So, I mean, I work a lot in the space and I work with a lot of different universities. And what I see across universities, some universities don't have career centers. Some universities do have career centers. Often career centers are highly understaffed. And I think they're not necessarily, they don't have the time to do the advising. But if you think about external career coaches like myself, I have partnered, I think there is a little bit of a, if you look at purely at my education, is mostly within academia. So for me, it's very hard to advise anyone on outside of academia, right, to moving into industry. I've never sat on the hiring side. I have never hired anyone. I have, never evaluated any resumes. That's why I, for example, I have a co-founder in the company who has been in hiring for over 20 years. And I think we're together an optimal team in that sense to support PhDs in their transition, because as Toby said, you need to understand the academic language, and there's usually a disconnect between industry and academic language. So you need to help the students to make the translation of their skills into something industry understands. And I think in this case, career coaches or collaborating with companies like ours can be really valuable, because we have sat down, we have understood what are the problems PhDs and postdocs run into when they make the transition, and how can we support them in optimally solving it. And of course, if one is in academia, I do have industries coming. I do have academic institutions coming to me and saying, Elena, we would like to implement something, but we simply lack the knowledge. Because what they recognize is we don't have the industry knowledge, and in order to prepare someone to move outside and prepare them for a career outside of academia, you need to understand what industry is looking after. So in my opinion, I think it would be, I'm very happy that you have this discussion here, because I think what I really would wish to see in the future is that every PhD student and postdoc who is thinking or has to, either voluntarily or involuntarily, has to move into industry or a career outside of academia, that they get the tools and the knowledge they need to make that move, basically.
Thank you.
A very long answer. Sorry. I hope I answered it.
No. So in order to summarize, I agree with Elena a little bit. I disagree a little bit with Toby. Why I'm saying this? Because I think that the appropriate language is the language, of industry as well. Because if the people they are going to be called to work, 70% of them, according to the statistics, you need to speak to them the language that market will understand and not the academic. So the academia should be adapted, or to integrate as well, this type of language and this type of terminology. And this is my in order to finish my first question and give the floor to Julia, it's like what we are doing during our doctoral studies or during the PhD supervision in order to train our students in this language and in this ethics and this culture of market. What kind of activities are we doing? Are we doing internships with the industry? This is very important to integrate. Are we train our PhD students to use the terminology of the market? Let's say stakeholders, timelines, deadlines. What does it mean this for the industry, and what does this mean for the academia? These are completely different definitions from one word to the other. And I think that beyond these career coaches, that I totally agree, in my opinion, should be people with experience in the market, people that they are university graduates. It's not, necessary to have a PhD because, the market, sometimes does not give a, I'm sorry about my language, does not give a shit, about the PhD in the universities. They would like, to be adapted to their, terminology and their way of working. I think that we need to do more during the training of our doctoral students to work and be adaptive to what market is looking for from ethical point of view, but also but with an interaction, with the market.
Yeah, I mean, as I just add, Kostas, we do agree. I think it also we have to recognize here that we're coming from very different points of view. I'm in the humanities.
Yes.
And there's a lot more resistance, right? The humanities are often very recalcitrant. And at least my university can be that way. Not everyone, of course, but I think that the thing is that I agree that yes, definitely industry language, but there's one important group that we really have to get on board, and those are the PhD supervisors, and those are the people who really we need, because if we don't have them on board, they're the gatekeepers to PhD students often. So, and they sometimes can be, have a very academic mindset. So not everyone also, in STEM fields where there's a lot more crossover to industry, maybe it's less of a problem, but in other fields, anyway, we need them to be on board, and we need people either collectively or to speak academic and industry language. Yes, and yes, indeed. Sorry.
Yeah. Sometimes I think, however, that the governance of the universities, they have this duty. I am one of them that say that the biggest problem or the biggest challenge within the university to be developed and follow the trends are the academics. So I mean, this is the role of the governance. These are the guidelines. This is what you should do. Take it or leave it. I mean, of this kind of attitude. I mean, you need to go ahead and provide graduate students that they are going to be happy with you and they are going to contribute for the further development of the university, not the ego of the academics, like this is what I know how to do and this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. No, this is not the case. The governance should say, take it or leave it, my way or the highway. This is, my approach on this. Julia.
Yes, thank you. Also from my side, a very insightful and enlightening also presentation, and you confirm my experience and also maybe a prejudice with the very advanced mindset of northern countries. Also, like the fact that the PhD supervision conferences takes place in Sweden says a lot. And actually, our program involves a Danish supervisor who works on supervision, like as a research subject, and she's an expert. And she does these a lot of trainings, supervision trainings, and yes. But anyway, to my question. I did a PhD in China studies, so I come from the fields of social sciences and humanities. So I also have a master in political science. But in the end, my conclusion is that I made a major strategic wrong decision in my life, doing a PhD in China studies instead of political science. But this is also something that is concerned. I think that concerns a lot how much information does sorry, do PhDs need before starting actually a PhD. And very often it's also like I'm not blaming my supervisor on, oh my God, she's a great person, but maybe in other and she would have she advised me in a lot of things, and she always gave me good advice. So but I think there are a lot of supervisors that are very proud, and that are very they want their own PhD students doing what they are doing according to their own like perception of how life should work, and life doesn't work. So I think this is a problem, and you're right that the people that we have to get on board on that in that are the supervisors. That there are different levels also. What Costa says with the university leadership, that they have a different vision that maybe then conflicts with the lower levels, and is also it's a complex issue. It's very complicated. But my actual question would be, as a PhD, you have very short time to succeed, and it's very crucial what you're doing. But you have a lot of requirements, and the requirements are growing. So 20 years ago, you had to finish it was enough. You wrote your dissertation, and then you got your job either in academia or outside, and nobody asked further question. Today, PhDs, they have to publish already during the PhD. They have to write their either is it monography, depending on the discipline, or is it publishing research articles in high impact journals. So they already have to come with a lot of skills into the PhD that in former time they would have learned during the PhD. So it's a lot of pressures and a lot of different things, and if they want to keep up with doing a PM, a project management course there, doing something there, but at the same time, you have to do your research, and you actually have to get solid, become solid in your research activities. Do you think that's reconcilable? So within 3 or 4 years. So do we not produce people that are, in German we would say neither fish nor flesh nor meat. So they know a little bit of this, they know a little bit of that, but they're not experts in what they're actually doing, whether it is research or something else.
Well, that's a great question, and we could spend a long time on it. It's of course a complicated situation. I'd say that yes, the problem of adding more to the curriculum is probably one of the factors fueling the mental health crisis of PhD researchers. I think the key is to for instance, I showed you the slide, that video of from Beyond the Professoriate, and like trying to basically have activities that overlap at the same time, as she was advocating. And one typical thing would be things that are directly useful for both academic and transfer, basically for building field expertise and getting transferable skills. Like one thing I do is a 3-minute thesis competition, which really helps students with their presentation skills, and they can go both ways with that, right? They can be better presentations because there's so many awful presentations out there. So, and doing a presentation well can help you get academic jobs. It's helped me. And also it's the kind of skill that you mobilize when making your pitch to a company for, for research funding or something, or during a job interview. So I think it's a question of choosing strategically certain things that maybe can, be multimodal and help with transferable and skills and academic skills at the same time, doing so very carefully. The book I showed you, the new PhD, Kasuta and White's book, they advocate for reducing some of the requirements for the American PhD, which is very grueling, and adding more cooperative work, internships, and such into it to better prepare PhD students for the reality of the job market, which is a lot about teamwork and communication. But yes, it's an unsolved problem. So we have enough on our hands to work with.
In our case, in Hellenic Mediterranean University, we are introducing the last 3 years, specific courses in soft skills, so the people to get aware of what do they should remember and how to cultivate. And this semester we are finishing a COI with 11 universities in research skills that also prepares them or give them a first introduction of what they should know, including the presentation skills, and among others, no. But the question that I have here, and this is my final question, if we don't have any other questions, I think that we should close, is the following. Okay, we demand too many things. We say that we should do this and we should do that. What about, if the universities, we hire based only in one criteria, or all our academics, they are promoted based on only in one criteria, how many publications, and if you have bring some grants. How are we going to cultivate the real importance of the PhDs? The real importance for them to be employable in general. If we hire, and I can see this, I can dare this. I have seen, professors and they teach, and they have no interaction. They have no soft skills in order to interact and transfer their knowledge. Probably they are excellent researchers. How many of us we have been in the conferences to attend a very famous scientist, and you say, like, he cannot present. I did not understand anything. So what do you think, Toby, what is the contribution of your doctoral school to your university governance in order, within the criteria of promotion, within the criteria of hiring, to include more KPIs than publications?
Yeah, I think it's, of course, the way to do it, of course, is to revise the criteria for promotion and tenure of tenure track faculty, and that will then trickle down to the expectations that are made on PhD researchers. One thing we've done is it is now, for instance, we have this PhD funding scheme here, these University of Iceland doctoral and postdoctoral grants, and they're now. When the supervisors are evaluated alongside PhD students, and one criterion is for evaluating supervisors is what experience they have in PhD supervisor training, right? And so they can upload their certificates, and that suddenly has created a sea change. That one little thing. As of yet, we have not been able to make a requirement that for promotion and tenure that PhD supervisors, do take these courses in supervision, or rather workshops in supervision. But that's one key. And then the Trojan horse, to use a Greek metaphor, to put in there is that part of the PhD supervisor training would be aiding students in mental health and career placement in some way, or at least being able to point students to these kind of resources, right? And I think that will change things. But you have to start small with one chink in the armor, one requirement that's changed, and then build outwards from there. So I would start with PhD supervisors. I would make ideally a requirement for promotion and tenure, or for getting grants. As is done in some countries, UK, Sweden, they must do these things. Netherlands. I think that will create the institutional change of incentives. And you're so right to mention university leadership. It is key here. We need visionary there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So I will conclude that more professional development, let's say, opportunities for the staff towards the target that we are envisioning will be the key. And I totally agree with this, because this will create a competition even between them, who is going to get, the micro-credentials. Let's say we can use the micro-credentials here in order, within each CV to include this kind of training. And, one question that I'm doing, since I'm coming from the South, I don't believe, like in the North, they are more North-South. This, I think in the South, because we are more innovative. But let me also state, because in Greece we still...
I'm not saying everything is great in the North, but some things are.
I'm kidding. I'm not taking it personal. So I would like to ask, because Toby, in Greece we still have this face-to-face supervision model. We don't have doctoral schools. So I'm doing this question to any speaker in this series of seminars. what are the biggest advantages, regarding the transition of the PhD studies from the personal model, 1-1 model, to doctoral school model? Just very briefly, what are the advantages that you have experienced?
Yeah, I think it's it's the advantages in terms of just the efficiency of PhD supervision and mental health for both supervisors and PhD students. Again, I would start with the target group of PhD supervisors or the real gatekeepers. What I say to them is, we want to get away from the master apprentice, the God-making model, to the it takes a village model, the networked approach. So I say to them, know about our resources. Are your PhD students having trouble writing? Well, then send them, and I guess some of them will use AI to circumvent that, but that is troubling for their own development of their own skills. And send them to the writing center. Do they present poorly? Will it handicap their career? Send them to us at the graduate school. I have, workshops on presentation skills. Are they not writing? Send them to our writing groups. We have writing groups on Wednesdays and Thursdays. So it's all ways of decreasing the pressure on PhD supervisors and doing what everyone else does in the work world, working in teams. So I would start with that group, really, target them precisely. And of course, we need to think about PhD students too. But as my theme today has been because it's been a problem here, PhD supervisors, work on that group, soften them up. And of course, there's many young ones who are coming in who are not resistant at all. The ones who graduated recently are our allies because they went through this very recently. They can see some of the things that we're talking about. But yes, working on that group.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Toby, for this presentation and the answers to our questions. I will give the floor now to Julia to close the session.
Yes, and I will close with the announcement of our next webinar, which will take place on the 29th of January, so in 1 week. And it will be with Dr. Monica Broido from the University of Tel Aviv. And it's about the impact of AI in scientific writing. So I think it very much connects very well to what Toby just said, even though he didn't know, maybe, or he did it on purpose to make the reference to the academic writing. Yes, so academic writing and writing skills, but also what helps students, PhD students, to actually bring down their analysis and their outcomes on paper, because this is a requirement in PhD, whether it is valued in industry or in other areas or not. It is fundamental to actually complete your PhD studies. And yes, so with this, again, thank you very much for joining today's webinar, and a big thank you to Toby and his great presentation and answers. And also thank you to, oh my God, she's gone. Ella is her name. You're the advisor.
Elena Hofer.
Elena Hofer.
Elena Hofer.
She's still here.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you. Sorry.
I'm still here. And by the way, also German, Julia. So
okay, great. So we start talking in German right now? No. Anyway,
no.
So
I think
maybe.
Sehr gut, ja.
Ja, sehr gut. Können wir gerne beim nächsten Mal dann machen. To add some multilingualism to our webinars. Thank you, Elena, also for your input. Very, very great and very constructive. Okay. Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.